It's 2:47 in the morning and you're sleeping deeply in a bed that took you years to afford. While your breathing is slow and the city outside is almost silent, there's a small shop 12 blocks from your house with its lights on, with nobody inside, just the constant hum of 12 washing machines spinning at the same time, water running inside the drums, dryers releasing hot air onto someone else's clothes, and coins falling into metal boxes that no one will empty until Friday. And while you sleep, that shop is making money, and it's not the only one. There are 11 more like it scattered throughout the city, all doing exactly the same thing, all without a single employee inside, all operating on the same simple logic that took you years to understand. People will always need clean clothes, and most don't want to wash them in their own homes. But to understand how you got here, we have to go back to some random night several years ago when you still didn't know anything. It was a Tuesday. You had finished your shift at the factory where you worked, and like every night you stopped by the self-service laundromat near the building where you were living at the time. You didn't have your own washing machine, you didn't have space for one, and above all, you didn't have the money to buy it. So every week you'd put your clothes in a black bag, walk 3 blocks, and pay 6 coins to wash, another 6 to dry. A boring routine, one of many. But that night, while you sat waiting on a plastic chair with your phone on silent, you looked up and noticed something you'd gone 2 years without noticing. There was no one attending the shop, no counter, no cashier, no salesperson, no owner, just people like you feeding coins into machines in a place that looked abandoned but clearly wasn't. And for the first time in your life, you asked yourself the question that would change everything. Who is collecting all this money? That night, you got home with the question lodged in your head. You opened your laptop, not to search for anything specific, just to understand. And as you read, you discovered something most people don't know. Self-service laundromats are one of the most profitable businesses in existence, precisely because they have almost no employees, almost no inventory, and almost no complications. The customer does all the work. The machines collect payment on their own, and the owner shows up once a week to empty the coins. You read figures, margins, operating models, profitable locations, and the more you read, the more you understood something important. Most businesses need your constant presence. This one doesn't. You started looking at the city's laundromats differently. You no longer saw a service, you saw a system. You saw people handing money to a machine without thinking. You saw clothes going in dirty and coming out clean without the owner doing anything. You saw the rarest luxury of all, a business that keeps running even when no one is supervising it. For months, you did nothing. You just observed. You passed by laundromats at different times of day. Morning ones were quiet, almost empty. Afternoon ones filled up with mothers carrying large bags. Nighttime ones attracted tired workers with no time to wash at home. And the ones in the early morning, those were the most interesting. Because there were the night drivers, the shift workers, the students who prefer washing at that hour because there's no line, the people the rest of the world forgets. And you understood something that would later make you a lot of money. A well-located laundromat never sleeps because the city never sleeps. When you finally decided to do it, you didn't have enough money to open a shop from scratch. Industrial machines cost a fortune. Renting a commercial space was unaffordable. And the permits, water installations, special electrical systems, all of it added up to numbers that kept you up at night. So you did something different. You looked for laundromats for sale, shops that were already operating but whose owners wanted out due to fatigue, moving, age, or because they simply never understood what they had in their hands. And you found one. A small shop in a working-class neighborhood with 8 old machines, yellowish walls, and an elderly owner who had been running the business himself for 15 years. He was tired, he wanted to sell quickly, he was asking for much less than the business was actually worth, because for him it was a burden, not an asset. You negotiated for weeks. You paid with all your savings, took out a small loan, and signed the papers one Thursday afternoon with trembling hands. You left that office with a key in your pocket and the feeling of having made the biggest bet of your life. The first weeks were chaotic. The old machines broke down constantly. The coin system had flaws. Customers complained because the dryers took too long. And you, who knew nothing about mechanics, spent your nights watching tutorials to learn how to fix whatever broke. You learned about motors, water pumps, electrical resistors, drainage systems, things you never thought you'd need to know. But you understood something crucial. Every time you called a technician, you lost 3 days' profit. Every repair you did yourself was money that didn't leave your pocket. After the first month, you did the tally. You subtracted electricity, water, rent, repairs. The coin stolen one morning when someone forced a machine, and still the shop had generated twice what you earned at the factory. And you understood something you could never forget. The difference between the poor and the rich isn't how much they work, it's what works for them while they rest. You quit the factory job a month later, not because your life was solved, but because you understood that as long as you were spending 8 hours a day inside that factory, you couldn't think about building anything bigger. And you needed time, not to be at the shop because the shop ran itself, but to acquire the next one. The second shop came 6 months later in another neighborhood, this time near an apartment complex where hundreds of families lived without their own washing machines. You knew exactly what you were looking for. Dense areas, small homes, workers with long hours, university students, people who value their time more than their money. You replaced the old machines with newer models, installed a digital system so people could pay by card and by app, and added security cameras connected to your phone. You no longer had to go to the shop to monitor it. You could do it from your bed at 3 in the morning if you wanted. The third shop came 4 months later, the fourth 2 months after that. And as the operation grew, you began to understand something deeper. Laundromats aren't clothing businesses, they're time businesses. People pay not to have to do something, and the faster and more convenient you make it for them, the more money you generate. You started installing larger machines, capable of washing double loads. You added wash and fold delivery services, where someone drops off dirty clothes and picks them up clean and folded the next day. You hired 2 people to handle that service because that one did require human hands, but the machines kept running on their own, always on their own. When you reached the 6th shop, you were no longer the owner of laundromats. You were the owner of a system. And then came the problem that appears in every business when it grows too fast: logistics. Each shop generated coins, but someone had to go empty them. Each shop had electricity and water bills arriving at different times. Each shop needed cleaning supplies, repairs, maintenance, chemical restocking. What you used to handle alone from home had now become an operation that needed structure. You hired an operations manager, then your own maintenance team, then someone dedicated solely to collecting money from the machines on weekly routes. You turned your company into something real with accounting, paid taxes, legal structure, because you understood another important thing. Small businesses are run with effort. Large businesses are run with systems. And if you wanted to go further, you had to stop being the one who does everything. After 3 years, you had 12 locations, some open 24 hours, others with extended hours, each generating automated income, almost without your involvement. And most of the people who walked into those shops didn't know they belonged to the same person. They didn't know that every coin they fed into a machine fell into the same pocket. They didn't know that behind a seemingly invisible business was someone who had built a silent empire, washing an entire city's clothes without the city ever noticing. And then one random night, something strange happened. You were sitting in your living room watching TV when an email arrived from one of your managers. A national laundromat chain wanted to buy your entire operation. 12 locations, all the machines, all the leases, the whole brand, the whole system. They offered a figure that took you several seconds to process. More money than you ever thought you'd have in a single transaction. More money than your entire family had earned in combined generations. And for the first time, you had to decide something you hadn't expected. If you sold, you'd make more money than you could spend in a lifetime. But you'd lose the machine that generated it. You took 3 weeks to respond, and in the end, you did something different. You didn't sell everything. You sold 6 locations, the oldest ones, the ones that had already given all they could give. And with that money, you opened something new, an industrial laundry service for hotels, hospitals, and restaurants. Because you understood that the real business wasn't in the small coins, it was in the big contracts, enormous volumes of laundry, fixed monthly payments, brutal margins. And while you managed that, the other 6 locations kept running on their own every night, without you having to be present. Now it's 2:47 in the morning again, and while you sleep deeply, there are machines spinning in 12 different places across the city. There's water running, hot air coming out of dryers, coins falling into metal boxes. And the most amusing thing of all is that most of the people who use those shops will never ask who the owner is, because they think they're paying to wash clothes, but they're actually paying for something much more expensive. They're paying not to have to think. And you learned long ago that this is the most profitable business of all, selling convenience to people who don't know how much their time is really worth.